those are 3 words. Great job, Mama. And yet I still remember that today. And so I think it's the power of kindness, is that actually it costs us so little. Like you said, it's just about being present. It's just about taking time to show up for people or to see people and let people know you see them. And yet the impact is deeply profound and lasting. Hey friend, welcome to the Growing Kindness Podcast. I'm your host, Deanna Kitchen, founder of the Growing Kindness Movement. This is a place where we grow together, learning to root our lives in kindness, connection, and community. If you've ever wished the world felt a little softer, a little more neighborly, or if you're craving stories that remind you that goodness still grows, you're in the right place. Together with our guests, we'll share stories of generosity and community, proof that even the smallest acts of kindness, from growing and giving cut flowers to everyday acts of care, can change lives and connect us in powerful ways. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. This season is made possible by Heirloom Roses, our Season 2 sponsor. We're deeply grateful for their generosity that helps carry the Growing Kindness mission forward and makes these stories possible. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad you're here with us today. I am joined today by Shari Froelich, one of our Growing Kindness ambassadors and longtime team members. Shari, we're so honored to have you here with us today to get to hear more of your story and your experience.
I'm delighted to be here, and I'm excited to tell my story.
Can you start out with just sharing a little bit more about where in the world you are? What corner of the world are you growing kindness in?
I'm in Northeast Lower Peninsula of Michigan, and I was born and raised in the house that I'm living in, but I spent all of my adult years away. My parents built this home before they got married, so it's near and dear to my heart. I have 2 siblings, a brother and a sister. My brother is now deceased. I was one of those wild childs that didn't fit my parents' mold of their expectations of just getting married and having kids. I was pretty determined to go to school, although what I wanted to do was become a medical doctor, and I never succeeded in that, but started out as a 1-year certificate LPN, and through the course of my educational pursuit, I ended up having a doctorate, but it's a doctorate in nursing practice. So in that journey, I also accumulated a few master's degrees because where I was living at the time was so specialized that I had to reinvent myself. And the only way I could do that, from my perspective, was getting another degree. But it's been a delightful journey. I've had so many opportunities to experience so many things, and I'm forever grateful. And I know that being a medical doctor, I would never had the variety of experiences that I've had. I have 2 kids. One of them actually lives in the state of Washington. I can't tell you where she's living right now because she moves so many times. She has a beautiful granddaughter, my granddaughter, who will be 26 this year. And my son lives in the state of Wyoming, and he has 2 twin girls by adoption. He has been their dad since they were 3. I don't think their adoption went through until they were about 5 or 6. And he's now a single parent to 2 lovely, high-maintenance twin daughters that are 16. So
there's certainly an intensity that comes with parenting teenagers. Shari, it's so easy for me to hear, even in just this bit of your story, how important family is to you and how it's been so central, and also how important serving others and caring for others through nursing has been to you. I think that it's so unique, and it's also so incredible that you persevered in pursuing an education the way that you did. You have certainly been a lifelong learner. I would love to know what drew you to nursing in the beginning. Or it sounds like at the beginning, your mission and goal was to be a doctor, which then ultimately you did accomplish through your doctorate in nursing. What drew you to the medical field and to caring for others in that way?
I don't honestly know I wanted to be a medical doctor when I was 16, so I don't have any recollection of why. But once I got into nursing, I knew that right from the get-go, for as long as I can remember, I was a nurturer. And that started out A bit. Because my dad sailed on this Great Lakes in the cement freighters, he was only home for 2 weeks in the summer and when the lakes were frozen over. So he always got off leave after Christmas, about January 5th. And then he started getting the boats prepared to sail again, probably mid-April. And so consequently, my mom was alone most of the year and she raised us. And it was always hard. But what I learned from her were a couple of things: that a woman can do anything. She just has her mind to. And so that has stuck with me all my life. And yet the other part was my brother's 4 years older, or was 4 years older, and my sister's 8 years younger. So I was old enough throughout all of this that she shared things with me. So I knew early on that I was my mother's emotional caretaker. And it wasn't anything bad, but it was just one of those things that I always was a great listener. So it was easy for us to talk over the years and develop that further. So that was really the foundation of nursing. And I would never have found that as a medical doctor, I don't think, at least not then, because healthcare was just so different then than it is now. And my first experience in nursing was working in a nursing home. And I had this profound need, I don't know, not a need, a desire at the time to never let anybody die alone. I just couldn't do that. So even if my shift was over, I was there. That persisted through pretty much all of my career as far as I could. I had some administrative roles. One of my master's degrees is in hospice and palliative care. So I was able to bring that to fruition. And I had the opportunity to set up the whole department of hospice and palliative care in the hospital. Even then, it was not in my heart to let anybody die alone. That has been a fundamental core of who I am. I had brought my mom home with hospice care. My dad, I couldn't because I lived downstate and I didn't have enough time to take away. But in the very last few days of his life, I was able to be with him in hospice care. And then my brother passed away in August of 2020. So it was just starting COVID, and he had been in a nursing home. And of course, during COVID, nobody could come and see him, but I knew how to navigate around the building, and we talked through the window, and that was always such a treasure. And that was the foundation of how my relationship with him changed, because he was always a person that had a love-hate relationship with me. And mostly I was on the hate end. But that ability for me to go in and see him, and I would get his grocery list, and it was always from Dollar General. So deliver them. And he called me one night and he said, just wanted to tell you I love you and I wanted to say goodbye. My hospice years went up like, what are you talking about? And he said, I don't think I'm going to be here very long. So as soon as we hung up, I'm on the phone with his providers at the nursing home. And he was also in hospice. And they said, we really don't see anything. I think he's just depressed. And I said, no, there is something different here. Because of the love-hate relationship, when I found out all this and put it together, I said, Rory, I'm going to bring you home with hospice. And he said, no, you're not. I don't ever want to go back into that home. And I said, I'm your sister, and I can be as stubborn or even more stubborn than you are. So anyway, it was just a wonderful transition. I was able to get him home with hospice for his last 5 days. And because it was COVID, I was finally able to get his twin sons to see him. They had never gone to the window. And I connected him with his oldest daughter, who was living in Louisiana, I think at the time. They had a horrible relationship, and was able to connect them on phone. And even though it wasn't on speakerphone, I could hear. It was such a gift that his daughter had said, Dad, I forgive you for everything. And I love you immensely. And he was like, oh my gosh, I love you too. So it was just this wonderful bonding moment at the end of his life that I'm so grateful that I could give him. And now I'm going to cry. But anyway, And then he wanted to be cremated, so we orchestrated that and took him out to his favorite spot to spread his ashes. But when he first brought him home with me, I was just starting a master gardener program and was introduced to growing cut flowers. After he passed away in 2021, I decided to have my first cut flower garden. Again, it was all through COVID. So I spent all my time. I had no idea how many flowers I would be producing, and I was so overwhelmed that I needed to gift them. He was a Medicaid patient, and he left a big bill that ultimately he was responsible for. And I took all the flowers to the nursing home and had big old buckets of flowers and just little jar-filled types of flowers, nothing magical or special, but I dropped them off at the door every week. I could never see the staff. I could never see the patients. And I did that every week through the whole summer in honor of him and hopefully to repay a small debt of what he couldn't. That was really the start of my growing flowers. And then stupidly the next year I went from 2 3-foot wide, 65 feet long growing space to 2 acres. And you can imagine the amount of overwhelm that I felt. And I was so overwhelmed, I really didn't do a whole lot of anything. I don't know why. But then I think it was at the end of 21 that Kelly Peace had introduced me to growing kindness. And I knew as soon as I kind of lurking into the group that I had found my home. I was able to refurbish my mission in a way I had no idea that it would become so near and dear to my heart. And it's giving love through kindness, and the vessel is flowers. That's just been very special to me. It's been a journey. My love of flowers started with my grandmother, although I didn't like her flowers. They were plain gladiolus at the time. But it took off. My mom absolutely loved flowers. Every area that she could, she filled it with flowers. She just grew them for the delight of them. She has a picture of me when I was about 2 or 3 years old. And I was sitting in the front yard, bending over, smelling a dandelion. And that was the start of my love of flowers. And all of her sisters, she had 3 sisters who all took a gazillion pictures of them and had to share their gardens. And they were magnificent. And they weren't rows and rows of flowers like I have now. They were just masses of flowers. And so this year I've decided that I want to get back to that. But the love of flowers really came through my mom. Not my sister. She got the organization and cleaning gene. I got the outside growing flower.
Oh my goodness. Shari, your story is the thread of nurturing is just woven throughout every piece of it. You have such a heart for caring for others. And like you said, that started with having a mom who empowered you and also who demonstrated love so beautifully. I want to back up because I think you have so many unique experiences and parts of your story. One of the things that we had talked about earlier in your relationship with your brother that I think it makes it incredibly dynamic is that you had mentioned in an earlier conversation, the two of us, that he was navigating in his life through some really unique challenges that impacted his relationships with other people, and the way that affected you getting to watch the way that you got to witness your parents and their relationship with him. Can you share a little bit more about that unique part of his journey and then your relationship together because of that?
Sure. He's 4 years older than I keep saying he is. He was 4 years older than I am. He was always a flight risk, and he became very unmanageable. In today's language, he would have been labeled oppositional defiant disorder child. Through the years in my own education, it became pretty clear to me that he had pretty significant bipolar. So he was hot and he was cold. And hot, he was running away, and cold, he was more neutral in terms of being loving. But because he was always a flight risk, over the course of his early life, He ran away several times, and my parents worried to no end of where he was, if he was alive, if, what was happening to him. And I think the longest period he was gone was about 10 years. And it was just hard and yet wonderful to see. Hard because I know my parents suffered, but when he arrived, it was like the prodigal son coming home. And so even though as we grew up, he still had a love-hate relationship with me, I chose to embrace the side of he's always welcome. I'd give the shirt off my back for him. And I know deep in his heart, he would do the same for me. Maybe not quite as much, but that's okay. He's a boy. And so that kind of balance persisted. And I'm very grateful for my nursing career because I had to set boundaries on him. He unfortunately developed a drug dependency after he was in the Army. And that was a challenge because when I became a prescriber, that's what he wanted was medication. I said, no, I'm not having this conversation with you. And he would get so mad at me because I would repeat that. I'm not having this conversation with you. And finally he would hang up, but he would call again and ask. But what was interesting is that typically he always hugged and kissed me when he saw me. And he always said, I love you. That was a theme in our family, but I never expected it from him. Again, when he got older, his life was still very volatile in terms of stability. He didn't have stability, but at times he would be good. He had 2 daughters. The first one died about a week after her birth. His second daughter actually passed away a year after he did. And then he had twin sons. So there was elements of stability, but even with his kids, it was a tenuous relationship at times. But I had no doubt that if he needed me at the end of his life, I would be there for him. So that's what I did. And it was difficult along the way. And yet it was such a wonderful ending of his life and our story.
I think knowing those parts of your story and that relationship makes those end days and that experience even sweeter for us to understand. And then to get to see the way that you continued even nurturing him through carrying his memory forward and carrying love forward in the ways that you grew those flowers and took them back to the community that had cared for him, I think is just really especially sweet. What a beautiful reminder to us all, though, in and through this story of how powerful it is to just keep loving people, even when things are hard. And I think that the way that you were able to bring him home and care for him and nurture him in that way is just profoundly beautiful. And also, I think that it's really profoundly meaningful the way that your career in a way prepared you for being able to care for him even in that moment. I think that palliative care is something that so many of us are really unfamiliar with. And end of life care and relationships is something that so many of us don't have to navigate until we do. And then don't know maybe necessarily how to even navigate through. What advice can you give us from your training and your experience that would help us to know how to show up and be there for people that are navigating through that same season?
Well, first of all, is when I approach people and they have some suffering, whether it's physical or existential, oftentimes because of the state of their being, not being able to communicate much of that. And if I can even get a nod or a blink, I will ask them, are you afraid of the before part or the after part? And that really reveals quite a bit. If they're afraid of the before part, typically it means that they're afraid of having pain and not having a peaceful death. Of course, there's always the element of worry about family members, how they're going to go on. And so I spend quite a bit of time, if the family is agreeable, to talking about, we're going to be okay, Dad. We're going to be okay. And we give you permission to go. And that becomes difficult family dynamics at some time. And one of the things I feel very fortunate to, because after I got my hospice and palliative care certificate or certification, I went on to become a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And it was only because that I saw in my family meetings such dysfunction. I thought, I have to, and of course, my whole family dysfunction, if you will, played into that. I have to delve into why people do the things that they do. And through the course of my psychiatric training, and even quite a bit with my hospice and palliative care training, I became a mediator of family meetings, and I could walk into a room and feel, whoa, this energy is not good. And I was always able to come to a resolution. And I learned from a very wise doctor in my hospice and palliative care, very early days. He asked me, Shari, what's the best way to go into a battle? And I said, I don't know, I've never been in a battle. He said, most people want to go around it, but the best way to go into a battle is go directly into it. And that has served me so many times so well in confronting relationships, even life issues. Like, okay, there's no point of skirting around the issue. Let's go. Painful outcome, so much better and quicker. That's been a part of me. I have to backtrack just a minute. Recently, I had to take a personality test. And very early in my life, I determined that I wanted to be a wise peacemaker. And this personality test came up that I was a dove and an owl. So it's symbolic of being a wise peacemaker. I just found that funny, but not funny. I mean, not surprisingly funny. If there's conflict, I know how to get through it and weather the pain. And a lot of things in life are like that. It's always benefited me. And when there's a challenge, I'm first one to take it on. I may not know exactly what I'm doing, but I've learned presence to witness stories. That would be the other thing in my hospice and palliative care journey. And oftentimes, again, I'm going way back to my nursing career as an LPN. Bedside nursing was very intimate. Nurses gave baths and back rubs, and foot baths were vital components of nursing care. So when I became a hospice and palliative care nurse, oftentimes the staff would tell me, we just can't get through to them. I start off with back rubs, and then I would get a pan of water, hot water, let their feet soak, and then just massage them. I didn't have to say a word. And they were telling me their life stories, their fears. And it was just, it's simple to me for whatever reason. And you just have to bear presence. Whatever they're going through, don't try to fix it. They know how sick they are, even though they haven't admitted it to anybody. They know what's going to happen. Yes, they do have fears, but even if you just pay presence to that, I mean, it's just a wonderful gift to them, but then a wonderful gift back to the person. Ask them about the before part or the after part, and then bear witness to their story. I found so many things that were wonderful. The first female post office person, a person who invented the first walking lawnmower. These were such wonderful treasures that if you don't stop to listen, you don't know anything about a person. Nothing at all.
That is such a beautiful reminder to us all, Shari, to just the power of presence and just being available to listen and to hear. What a gift it can be to a person going through. And I think the beauty in that is what a gift to a person who is in stage of life, but also in the bigger picture, that gift is so powerful to anybody navigating through any experiences, to just be there and hold space and hear their story. So thank you for that reminder to us all, that the power that we have and the help that we can be to someone who may be in that stage of life, to be able to just simply hold out the gift of presence and listening. So thank you for sharing that with us.
How that manifests today in at least the growing kindness world is I listen by my eyes, but also, sounds weird, by my ears when growing kindness fellow members post something. I try to delve into what are they really saying? And many times they'll get responses to what they're not asking. And so I really try to answer from an aspect of what are they saying? Why are they saying it? And what do they need?
Yeah, which is so much a picture of that nurturing heart that you have. I've had the gift of, when you talk about our community, our online community, where people from our team can meet each other, connect, ask questions, share struggles. I've had the gift of getting to witness your interactions with so many people there. And that has been so evident and seen. It's just that nurturing ability. And I love that there's this thread throughout your entire story of the importance of care and connection and nurturing, whether that was in your family or in your experience caring for your brother in his end days or through your care in nursing. And I think that it's been really beautiful to get to watch that thread woven throughout our community in the way that you have just showed up to just look out for people and check in on people and cheer people on and ask those bigger questions. I think sometimes we're all just looking for someone to hold space and hear our story or hear our challenge. And so it's so lovely when we get to be that for somebody else. And then it's so inspiring for anyone who gets to witness that happening, those types of interactions. So Shari, flowers really have kind of been woven throughout your story as well. Obviously, your mom and family inspired a deep love of flowers when you were young. And then it was through your experience with his brother in his end days and end of life care, and then taking flowers back to his care home where kind of the spark was lit for you in growing and giving flowers. As the years have unfolded, you've grown and shared flowers in many, many ways. What have been some of your favorite memories or experiences since that time when you first started growing and giving flowers as acts of kindness after your brother's passing that maybe just stay with you or that are something that you hold near and dear to your heart?
There were two specific types of, I'm going to say venues, but they were really events. One was an isolated one, and that was the first year that I grew tulips, and I didn't realize that they were all going to bloom at one time. So I packaged them up, and I have no way to, what am I going to do with them? And so I bundled them up in nice, pretty paper and took them downtown, and I walked the streets with bundles and I just pass them out, walk away. Once in a while, people would say, why are you doing this? I can. But I also went to the UPS store and gave one to the mail person at the, what do I call it? Person behind the desk, the service person. And he said, what am I going to do with these? And I said, well, give them to the woman you know and love. And so he laughed at that. Then I was walking out and trying to get stuff together in my car to leave. And then a couple of vehicles pulled up and I decided I want flowers. So I just walked over to them and they opened the window and I gave them flowers. So it's always the best to me when you could just hand them out, don't have to say anything, and their faces reveal it all. And then later that day, I was just walking down the sidewalk and giving them away, and men, women, anybody that I could do. So it was fun. Then the second way that just had meaning for me in a way that I was not quite prepared for was taking my little red flyer wagon downtown to Alpena. I live about 8 miles from town, and filled it with little bouquets of flowers, arrangements. And as women, mostly women, as they exited Walmart. I walked up to them and handed them a little arrangement. And that was so magical because here in Alpena, we have our demographics are such that we have a small portion of affluent people. Most of the people are uninsured, unemployed, and we also have a high proponent of people with mental health disorders because Alpena has one of the only facilities in northern Michigan that mentally ill people can go to reside for a bit of time. So anyway, you never know who's going to walk out of the store. And I've had women break down and say, nobody has ever given me flowers. Or women, I have to hug you. Okay, I'll take it. Women who say, why did you do this? And again, I'll just say, because I can. And so many people said, you just made my day. That was the best reactions I could ever imagine. And it gave back to me tenfold because it was people who were not expecting anything. They've never gotten much in life that would say, this is a good life. And yet I hope that moment made them feel like they were worthy.
I think that flowers just have this power, unlike any other thing, to let people know how seen they are and how important they are and that they deserve beauty. There's something about giving somebody something that's purely for the sake of beauty and joy. I think that has an impact that's unlike receiving any other kind of gift, like even if it's essential care needs or things like that, but to receive something purely for the just joy and beauty of it's so powerful. And I just cannot imagine how many people that day walked away from that interaction with you and held tightly to that memory for a very long time, long after those flowers have faded. I am sure many of them think back on that moment and remember when somebody saw them and gave them beauty and kindness just because they existed, just because they deserved it just for being. And especially as you were sharing the dynamics of the population there, to think, like you said, those are people who the luxury of flowers is not typically within reach. So the power of receiving them is even greater, I think, when it's something that we don't even have the opportunity or resources to gift ourselves. Wow. I had goosebumps listening to that.
As you're talking, the whole aspect of them remembering me is never something I think about. And even back into my nursing, I educated, I nurtured. My philosophy was, as a nurse manager at one point in time, is you grow them and then you grow them. So you have them to nurture, to educate, to train, and then your ultimate perspective or goal is to move them on. Somewhat like a parent. I can't tell you how many people came to me later on in my career and said, you were instrumental in my decision to go to nursing school, or you were my impetus of wanting to go for a higher degree. And I'm thinking, I have no clue what I said or did. I mean, I'm unaware of that.
I think whenever we meet people with gentleness and kindness, it is memorable. And the beauty in that is it costs so little to give. It costs us just a moment, an intention to give. And yet the value of it is so great and so lasting. And I think that's something that just, again, is woven throughout your story of just nurturing and caring for people in these little ways and big ways, and it just pouring out, and then that being something that those people could carry with them. It's a memory that I can think of so many just tiny little moments and interactions where probably the other person may or may not remember that they did it or said it. Just little things like the woman in the grocery store who told me that I was doing a really great job just in a day when I didn't feel like I was doing a really great job as a mom. Great job, mama. Like those are 3 words. Great job, Mama. And yet I still remember that today. And so I think it's the power of kindness, is that actually it costs us so little. Like you said, it's just about being present. It's just about taking time to show up for people or to see people and let people know you see them. And yet the impact is deeply profound and lasting.
I have one other story to tell you about my brother. At least he's the background piece. I retired from my professional job in 2021, and I was working in psychiatry at the time, and I loved it. But I knew at that moment in time that I didn't have the reserve any longer to give to people. So I transitioned into my giving to flowers. And there's a little bit of backstory here. So I grew flowers, and I realized, well, this is my nursing career in one season. You birth them, you grow them, you diagnose them, you treat them, and then they die. But after, you see, I was retired for about 3 years, and growing cut flowers is still a lot like COVID. It's very isolating. So I got this, actually it was a Facebook Messenger letting me know if I wanted, I could interview with this company for doing Department of Transportation physicals. And I thought, that's interesting. And I got it. But my desire to do it was because my brother was a trucker. Throughout his life, I said it was a grumpy and then a lovey, and a grumpy and a lovey. Throughout all my career, I've been able to take the grumpiest of men because I knew how to talk to them. That's not my nature, but I could do it. Now that I'm working for the Department of Transportation, I get the grumpiest men sometimes. And I can relate. And just as I am able to do that, I can't tell you how many grown men I've made cry. I don't intentionally try to do that, but I do that apparently through the questioning and the listening and the responses, always to not what they're saying, what I'm seeing beyond that. A little bit from what they're saying. This has been weirdly wonderful.
How full circle, though, to be able to take all that you've learned through your long career in nursing and psychiatric care, and then to take all of your experiences in caring for your brother and walking alongside him through his difficult journey with mental health, and then to be able to weave that in and through just such specialized care for a really unique group of people. You think about trucking as a very isolating and isolated career and how lonely that could be. And again, that piece of just saying, I see you and I want to hear your story and I want to ask you more. What that can do for people. What an absolute beautiful gift.
One more thing to round this out is that my goal this year is to give truckers flowers. That's been brewing in my mind. That's what I'm going to do this year and see, just for the fun of it.
I could not love that more. I don't remember in a conversation I had recently with someone, we were talking about how, and I don't recall the statistic exactly. I need to be better about having statistics ready and quotes ready, but it was the fact that like very few men receive flowers in their life. They're given flowers at their funeral. And what a beautiful experience it is. We forget that there's no qualifier for who enjoys the beauty, the joy of flowers. Like they're for everybody. Everybody is impacted by them. And I think what a special thing to get to reach out to this population, especially, and say, hey, I see you and you deserve beauty and you're remembered as well. Shari, I cannot wait to hear how this unfolds this year. Please be sure to update us along the way.
I will.
Well, what an honor, an absolute honor it has been to get to hear more of your story and see the way that these threads of nurturing and caring for others are just woven throughout every part and where it has led you and where it is leading you next. Shari, one question that we always ask at the close of our interviews, I think it just because it illustrates so much the power of just one small thing and what it can do for somebody. I'd love to ask you, what is a small kindness that someone has done for you, you still carry in your heart today?
It was my mom who really gave to me the foundation of nurturing and caring along the way, whether I was listening to her, watching her. I knew over the years that she gave to different people and businesses, her physicians, her whoever. She gave baked goods and she gave berries and she gave so many things. And she was just the sweetest person you could imagine. And I will never meet those standards because she was very different from me. I have my dad's side, which can be equally as stubborn. My mom was never stubborn. It was through her, and it's through her that her love of flowers, she had a better green thumb than I probably ever will. It was very simple back then. These days, it's a little more complicated. I think when you're growing not only to gift, but sometimes to sell, because you want perfect. Wow. Anyway, she gave me so much, and I'm forever in debt of her kindness, her teachings, and hopefully I can pass it on somehow, although none of my kids like flowers.
I think it is beyond safe to say that you are inspiring a legacy of kindness as well, Shari. Shari, thank you for joining us today. It has just been a delight to get to be with you and hear your story. Thank you so much for listening to the Growing Kindness podcast. If today's episode encouraged you, there are a few simple ways to keep growing kindness with us. First, you can join the team. When you become a Growing Kindness gardener, you link arms with like-minded, like-hearted people from all around the world who believe that small acts of kindness really do make a big difference. To learn more or join the team, visit growingkindnessproject.org/gardener. Thanks to the generosity of our donors, membership is free. Another way to get involved is to become a donor. The Growing Kindness movement and this, our podcast, are made possible by the generosity of our donors, kind-hearted people who believe, just like you, kindness matters. If you'd like to support the movement, visit growingkindnessproject.org/donate to make a gift and keep kindness blooming. And finally, if this episode touched your heart, would you share it with a friend? It's one of the simplest ways to spread kindness today. I'm so grateful you're here. Until next time, keep growing kindness, one bloom at a time.